Slim Pickens, Dynasty Rookie Rankings. Players, they just be falling. And we're about to break down who's slipping down the rankings right now on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. Welcome back, folks, to another episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Lamarco. Oh, I did it again, folks. I did it again. I left the YouTube link open and I started talking to myself. I'm hearing thoughts. It's my own thoughts. But anyway, we're starting. It's always Dynasty Day. I'm making these crazy mistakes, but that's okay, folks. Once again, welcome back to the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Lamarco. Here we're doing a breakdown today. The fallers down the Dynasty rankings. That's right. Paul Blake has decided a couple players, they're done. They're slipping. They're out. And we're going to break down those players today on the show. Before we do, make sure you're following us across the board at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube. Make sure you're also going to Razzball Fantasy on IG and TikTok. We're posting daily content on there as well. Then, of course, make sure you go to razzball.com to check out all the great articles that are dropping on the baseball, basketball, hockey, and football side. Let's bring in my co-host for today. It's Paul Blake. Paul Blake, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I've lost my mind already. I'm already losing my mind. I did it again. I don't know when I'm going to learn. It's always Dynasty Day. I'm really sharp on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, you name it. But Wednesdays, it's the middle of the week. I'm lost in my mind. But anyway, I got you on today to talk a little bit about some of the Dynasty rookie ballers, players that are slipping down those rookie rankings today. Some guys at the top, first-round pick that's no longer a first-round pick, and a couple of guys in the middle rounds that I think are interesting names long-term. So I want to get some of your feedback on them. So let's get started at the top. First player we're going to talk about today is George Pickens, who, by the way, slipped to 13th on your rankings last week. Before the change, he was 10th overall, and you actually slipped him behind players like Wan'Dale Robinson, Christian Watson, and John Mechie. So what's the reasoning why George Pickens has fallen to 13?
Yeah, so the main reason why Pickens falls to 13 is really almost no fault of his own. I think this guy's got wide receiver one upside. He's really got those type of traits, those type of skills. He's got the size, got the speed, got the ability to be a wide receiver one, but he's also got a lot of competition. I mean, he's going to have to siphon targets away from Deontay Johnson, who is a target hound there in Pittsburgh. He's got to siphon away from Chase Claypool, another superstar athlete who hasn't done it yet on the field, but as far as measurables go, he's tough to match. Pat Freiermuth stepped forward last year. I don't know if he's going to be the same type of tight end without Ben Roethlisberger, but he's shown that he can produce at the NFL level. Also, Najee Harris gets really involved in this passing game, and now that's a lot of big names that have to be supported by either Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett, and I'm not sold that either one of those quarterbacks can feed that many mouths and make that many people fantasy relevant. Now, moving forward, I really like George Pickens. Like I said, I think he's got the skills. You're looking at Deontay Johnson being a free agent next year. I don't know if Pittsburgh decides to re-sign him, what they do there, but if this is a George Pickens wide receiver room without Deontay Johnson, I see him stepping up and being pretty good there. I also kind of forgot Calvin Austin, another player that I really like, who's much further down my board, but kind of more of that athletic slot receiver, kind of little guy who can make something happen there. So it's more of a question of the quarterback. I don't think the quarterbacks can support this much right away, which makes me think, okay, we can wait back, because you know how I feel about, rookies that we're waiting for next year. I'm not going to push them to the top of the first round. Those are more my second round guys.
So Deontay Johnson is going to be a free agent after this season. Mm-hmm. Chase Claypool's only around for 2 more years. But like you said, it's kind of one of those interesting things where we don't really know how good Kenny Pickett's going to be. And is Mitch Trubisky going to bounce back? Mitch Trubisky has proven he can support a guy like Allen Robinson. So the question comes, though, is Pickens going to be the guy? Like, is he going to be the go-to guy for Mitch or Kenny Pickett? I think you're correct on the slippage here. The interesting players that you jumped ahead, though, I know Wan'Dale's like your guy, Christian Watson, we talked about last week, and John Mechie. So I guess, was there any factors for those players jumping him, or was it just simply the fact that George Pickens, you felt like has too much competition for targets?
Yeah, great question, Bobby. So, yeah, Wandale Robinson, I'm a big fan of Wandale. I watched a lot of film on him, and he is just, I think in the article I've got coming up, I say he's a hold your breath type of guy. When he gets the ball in his hands, you kind of, what's going to happen? This guy's going to do something. I mean, he was second in the SEC in receptions last year, second in receiving yards in the SEC. And if we're looking at the SEC like it's the closest approximation at the NFL, you got to really take heed with that. You got to understand that Wandale Robinson is a stud who could possibly jump in and do things right away for the New York Giants, where I don't see Pickens jumping in right away and dominating for the Steelers. I think he could if he had the right quarterback, definitely, but I don't know that he can do that. As far as John Mechie goes, just less competition. I like Nico Collins. I think Brandon Cooks is a pretty good receiver, but down there in Houston, I think it's kind of open there. I think Mechie can get in there. Who was the other guy that I jumped in front of him? I can't remember. We had a third.
Wandale and Christian Watson.
Watson, obviously. That's just superstar talent there too, and obviously much less competition there. So it's less about the ability, which this has been all my adjustments for the rankings mostly. It's less about the ability, more about the opportunity.
All right, let's talk about the next guy on your list. It's Isaiah Spiller, which is kind of surprising. He's up 5 spots at 23rd overall. So what was your thoughts behind the Isaiah Spiller slippage here?
I just don't see how he gets on the field all that much. Austin Eckler is a monster. I mean, that guy, you look at Spiller and you're like, okay, this is a bigger back. Maybe he winds up as the goal line back. But why are you taking Eckler off a goal line? I don't know if you if you watch HBO or if you watch any of the Hard Knocks series, but when HBO was with the Chargers for Hard Knocks, they had this little this segment where they showed all the running backs jumping over these giant pads and just kind of like see how high you can jump. And Eckler, man, it was incredible. Like the pads were above the dude's head and he's leaping up over them. I don't know if he really, I don't think in an ideal world, the Chargers are taking Austin Eckler off the field unless he says, let me go off the field and I need a break. And so I don't see how Spiller gets on. Now, if Eckler were to miss time, love Isaiah Spiller. I mean, the top end speed's not there, but he does everything else well. And I think he's the type of guy who could step in for an injured or absent Austin Eckler and really make some hay. But now we're waiting on an injury, and that's why you wind up a little bit further back for me.
Yep. And his fourth round ADP is kind of makes him a day 3 pick. And those are kind of always a toss up. I mean, we talked about it in our previous shows. It's a 5% hit rate for those kind of players. Eckler's under contract for 2 more seasons, so there isn't a clear path right away. The one thing I thought was interesting was his comparables are kind of guys like Carlos Hyde, Eddie Lacy, a little more power backs. And Lombardi comes from the New Orleans Saints that featured Alvin Kamara and a guy like Mark Ingram. And it could be that they're looking for that power back, that Mark Ingram type, to go along with an Eckler who fits more of a Kamara role. So maybe there's an idea that they get a guy like Spiller on the field to kind of fill that Mark Ingram role since Lombardi comes from the New Orleans Saints. So that's a possibility, but I do hear you on the fact that Eckler is going to be an absolute stud for the next 2 seasons. Let's jump into the next guy on the list, Jalen Tolbert, 28th overall. You dropped him 4 spots. Now, I think this is a lot to do with you pushed up some running backs into the back. We talked about in the last episode. But what is another reason why you faded Jalen Tolbert to outside the top 24?
I was kind of reading some articles on the Cowboys, and as much as that pains me, I'm not a big Cowboys fan, but reading a lot about the Cowboys and the receiving group. And people are saying Michael Gallup is coming back pretty quickly. I guess he was seen on the sideline doing some running, doing some jumping. He's, been through some injuries before, and he certainly can bounce back. If Michael Gallup is ready to go fairly early on in the season, I don't see Tolbert kind of taking over that second receiver and running with it like a lot of people do. Now, he's got awesome production in college, but so does James Washington. So does Michael Gallup. So does CeeDee Lamb. All these guys produced in college, right? He's got the size. He's got, he's 6'3", 190, so he does offer a little bit of look, but they've already got that tall kind of lithe, lanky receiver there with CeeDee Lamb. So I don't know if that's kind of just repetition there. So basically it was pushing those running backs up and also the strength of that Michael Gallup report that made me think, okay, well, maybe I better pump the brakes on this guy.
So he does have a decent capital. I mean, he's a 3rd-round pick, so that does give me some confidence. But like you just brought up, Gallup and CeeDee Lamb are at least under contract through 2023. So that's 2 seasons. That's a problem. But I like his comparables because they did talk about Adam Thielen, Keenan Allen, Eric Decker. All those guys have experience playing kind of a bigger slot role. I know CeeDee Lamb kind of dominated that last year, so I do like the fact that he might be a player to move around with those other guys. With Schultz there, potentially with another contract and those two receivers, what's the odds that they're going to support a fourth guy, especially when you have Zeke and Tony Pollard in the backfield?
So, I was going to say, we didn't even talk about Tony Pollard yet. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, it's too much. And I think that's in fantasy football. Sometimes you have to take a step back and realize there's only so much to go around. And then you have to factor that into these situations. So I don't hate it. I don't hate the drop here. The next player is kind of an interesting, Romeo Doubs. Maybe it's a correction because he is kind of a 4th-round pick going to the Green Bay Packers. You have him at 29th, which is still pretty solid. That's 4 spots lower. So what was the thoughts on Doubs? Why he's slipping? Did you hear anything in training camp, or is it just because you're pushing up those running backs?
You read my mind. It was really a little bit of a correction on Doubs. I pushed the Packers rookie receivers up because someone's got to catch passes from Aaron Rodgers, and Doubs is a pretty big guy. I thought, well, he's got as good a chance as just about anybody. But you really start looking at the Packers receiving room, and it's not as barren as it really looks. I wrote some names down. Obviously, Al Lazard, Christian Watson, Randall Cobb, but you got Sammy Watkins, Amari Rodgers, Samari Toure, fellow draft pick there, 7th-round pick. Juwan Winfrey, who maybe you like, Bobby. I don't know. You brought him up before.
Yeah.
They have an undrafted free agent in Danny Davis, who don't let the numbers at Wisconsin fool you. He was a quality receiver there. It's just Wisconsin's allergic to throwing the football. So that, nothing looks great. No receiver looks good there, but Danny Davis has also got some personality issues. He had to sit out a few games because of an alleged assault situation. So that probably kicked him out of the draft, but he is a talented player. And then you look that they've got that Malik Taylor too. So he's more of a special teams maven. So I think they've got to hold one spot for Malik Taylor as a receiver because he's such a special team stud. And now all of a sudden we're looking at all these receivers. They're not all going to make the 53-man. Some of these guys are going to wind up at the practice squad. Doubs has issues. He's kind of a linear route runner in college, doesn't show a lot of versatility in his routes. He could be a guy who, even though he's got that good size, I think he's 6'2", 200, so it's kind of like throwing to a beefier running back out there. But, I guess there's only so many mouths you can feed here, and Doubs might be the odd man out.
Yeah. I made the argument last week about Christian Watson. With Aaron Rodgers, he is not the type of guy who takes a rookie receiver and says, "Get on the field, kid, and let's do it." It takes years. It takes years for these guys to earn Aaron Rodgers' trust. And we brought it up on the last show at Watson. The reason why I wasn't so high on it, because it could take 3 years. And by that time, is Rodgers even on the team anymore? And who's throwing in the ball? So by the time Aaron Rodgers decides that Romeo Doubs is a solid number 2 and starts giving him like Alan Lazard's type stuff from last year and gets him in that kind of role, he might be out of the league. I mean, Aaron Rodgers might be gone. So I think Packers receivers are kind of being pushed up a little bit because of the Aaron Rodgers effect. But like I said, it's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of question marks. So I think I'm going to fade him there. Any final comments about Doubs?
Well, one more thought on that is, you got OBJ still out there. Odell Beckham Jr. I know the Packers made a run at him last year when he was a free agent. Who's to say they don't bring him in after he kind of gets through all this ACL stuff? They don't bring him in for a look, and if Odell Beckham Jr. winds up on the Packers, all these guys are going to slide down, right? I mean, he's going to go to wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 on that squad if he's healthy. Granted, if he's healthy. So there's another big name out there that they've talked to before that could be a potential that would bump a lot of these guys down too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks, that's all we got for today. Once again, this is the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. Make sure you're checking out, subscribing, leaving comments, and get at Paul Blake once in a while. Don't let this guy skate. If you don't like his takes, let him know about it. So leave a comment, jump on the show. Also, make sure you're checking out us on IG and TikTok at Razzball Fantasy. And also make sure you go to razzball.com to check out our consensus Dynasty rankings. You get to see Paul Blake, Heath Cummings from CBS Sports, Fantasy Pros, you name it. We got it. So go check it out on razzball.com. Once again, I'm your host, Bobby LaMarco. For my co-host today, Paul Blake, we are out of here.